This is the Turf Zone Podcast, your central information and news hub, bringing together professionals from turf associations across multiple states to share things to help you and your business. Brought to you in partnership with our friends at the Tennessee Turfgrass Association. This episode is sponsored in part by Sod, world-class service on demand. Visit us online at www.buysod.com. Now, let's get in the zone.
Welcome to the Turf Zone. In this episode of Tennessee Turfgrass, we're talking to Ryan Storey, TTA Secretary, Treasurer, and Sports Turf Manager at Vanderbilt University. Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for joining us. We just want to hear a little bit about what you do and your background in turf and your service with the TTA. So I'm going to start with the easy question. How did you get into turfgrass management?
I was playing baseball. I loved baseball my whole life. Always, played as long as I could until I figured out it wasn't going to pay bills. And so I had a kind of a mentor back home in Bill Marbett who kind of got me into the whole turfgrass thing. And I guess once figured out I wasn't going to play ball, he's like, well, you like working on ball fields. Let's see what we can do. And so he had a contact down at Mississippi State and had me a job lined up on the grounds crew. And here I go off to Mississippi for a 4-year education in turfgrass management.
All right. So you were in Mississippi. Did you come? Where is back home, by the way?
So back home is Columbia, Tennessee. I was born and raised until went off to college and I didn't know a soul at Mississippi State and went down there not knowing anybody and met a bunch of good friends and my wife.
Very good. So y'all are back in Columbia.
We are. We moved around a little bit. Went from Mississippi State to Ole Miss to work for a little while, then down to New Orleans and then back home.
Okay. What was the career path with once you got out of school, all those different jobs and moves? Did you go in as a sports turf manager or kind of how did you progress to get to where you are today?
So when I graduated from Mississippi State, I wanted to stay close. My wife was, we weren't married at the time, but I wanted to stay close to her. So I took a job at Ole Miss as the assistant sports turf manager, doing all of their athletic fields and facilities. And once my wife graduated and got married, she moved in and we hung around for a little while, and she'd never lived further than an hour and a half away from home. So she kind of wanted to get out and see the area, and I told her to pick a spot and I'd try to find a job. So she picked New Orleans, and we wound up moving to a nice little town just north of New Orleans across Lake Pontchartrain called Mandeville, Louisiana, and was at a 36-hole country club with hydraulic irrigation in the deep south. It's not fun. Don't recommend it to anybody. So we stayed there for 2 years and had a kid on the way. And I grew up with grandparents, and I wanted my kids to have grandparents. So we made the decision to either move back to Mississippi or back to Tennessee. And she said that Tennessee would work. So we moved back home, and here we are.
Very good. So you had a period of time there you were on a golf course instead of sports turf.
Correct.
How was that different, and what was your overall feeling about being in golf?
It's a lot of grass. 36 holes, like I said, with hydraulic irrigation. If you've never experienced working on a golf course, you need to, just for your career's sake, because you appreciate those guys a lot more when you're there when the sun comes up and you're leaving when the sun goes down. You're out and about with the members, and it was a lot of grass, different heights of grass. I'd never really worked on greens that much. I was always a sports turf guy. So kind of getting that aspect of it, it can make anybody a better turf manager. Just, having to fine tune everything, trying to bring some of the golf agronomics over into the sports turf agronomics. It was an eye opener for sure.
Absolutely. So the timing of getting out of golf and back to sports turf and back near grandparents was pretty good with that first baby on the way for sure.
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
So let's talk about your current job at Vanderbilt. Tell me about what you do there and how big is your team and what exactly do you manage there?
So Vanderbilt's unique in the fact that we don't just do the grass things. We have paved surfaces, parking garages, residential halls, a couple off-campus properties. I have a crew of 2 guys that come in at night. They do our parking garages and help out, kind of where needed if we can get some stuff done at night. But our main focus is my sports turf crew, and we have 4 guys plus myself. We have a synthetic football field, a synthetic baseball field, synthetic football practice field, a synthetic indoor facility, and 1 synthetic intramural field. And then our natural surfaces are a soccer lacrosse stadium, which is a shared facility between the soccer team and lacrosse team, so that one never gets a break. Football is a natural grass practice field. We have our track infield, which doubles as a kind of a practice facility for whichever soccer or lacrosse is not in season. They go up there and practice. And then we have 3 natural grass intramural fields that we mow, line, paint, and all that good stuff.
That's a lot of shifting gears between artificial and paved surfaces and natural grass. Did you ever expect to have to wear all those hats?
Not really. This morning was interesting when we went out this morning and had to paint a giant crosswalk in front of a main driving campus while the kids are gone for spring break. So just stuff like that pops up every now and then. Need help painting crosswalks or restriping a parking lot or clean elevator lobbies and parking garages. So it's something different, something new, something I'm not really used to doing with the turf degree, but it's part of the job and we'll get it done one way or another.
Just adding all kinds of things to your skill set. It's a good thing.
I don't know if it's good or bad.
All right. So now I have to ask this because I'm getting back out on the baseball and softball fields with my kids, and not only has this rainy spring been terribly depressing, but how's it shaping up for you on your natural grass fields? Has that been a challenge already this year?
So yeah, the weather did has had an impact already with as wet as it's been and as warm as it's been. Just trying to get out and make different applications, whether it be pre-emerge or a fertilizer or herbicide, just to try to stay on top of things. Weeds have popped a little bit earlier than normal around here. We had to get rain suits on and go out and line fields in the rain because there was a game or a practice fixing to happen. And it's been a challenge, but I live in Nashville, Tennessee, where there's a lot of sports turf managers around, and we all have to fight the same battle. So I'm not the only one fighting them.
Absolutely. Well, that brings me to your involvement in TTA and serving as an officer. I know that what I hear a lot of members say is just that sharing of knowledge and kind of being able to bounce things off of each other is really important. Has that been something that you've appreciated as part of being involved in TTA, and how did you get involved in serving on the board?
So it was probably 3 years ago, I think it was. At the time, Theo was the president and had come up to me and said, hey, we need some more sports turf involvement on the TTA board. Would you be interested? And I said, sure, anything to keep turf relevant in Middle Tennessee or the whole state for that matter. And started out just serving as a member on the board for 2 years. And then this year, with the executive board having to switch around and move up, changing of presidents and vice presidents, and I was nominated for secretary treasurer, and so I don't mind the position at all. Like I said, anything to keep sports turf and turf in general relevant and going in the state of Tennessee, I'm all about.
Absolutely. Have you had anybody else who's been a big influence on your career path?
So I got my start with Bill. He started inviting me going down. We did the SEC baseball tournament I did it for 12 years in a row, starting in 2001. And, got to meet a lot of guys that were in the industry. Some guys weren't in turf grass. But going through that process helped me land one of my first internships I did with the Birmingham Barons. And at the time, it was Darren Siebold was the sports turf manager there. And so I got to work under Darren for 8 months, learned a lot from Darren with him being with the Houston Astros and the Dodgers. And he was at a golf course. And so Darren taught me a lot of things. And, he's where he is because he was a great sports turf manager and a great boss. very knowledgeable. He's helped me along the way in my career path. Bart Prather was the sports turf manager at Mississippi State when I was in college, and I worked under him on the grounds crew. And he kind of pioneered the way for me as far as that's the first football field I'd ever painted. I was always a dirt guy coming from Bill, but when I got down to Mississippi State, he kind of brought the grass into it for me. You know, a lot of hands-on, painting logos, painting football fields, mowing patterns, just an endless amount of knowledge when you work with somebody every day that has the knowledge and they're willing to share, like you'd mentioned earlier.
Very good. So what is your proudest accomplishment as a sports turf manager?
Ooh, proudest accomplishment. I guess I don't know if I can say I accomplished it or not, but I guess working and building a good enough relationship with Coach Corbin and our baseball team. They invited me out to Omaha, so I got to spend almost 2 weeks in Omaha watching College World Series baseball. We brought home a national championship, and that was good enough. And then to get presented a World Series champion, a national championship ring was even better. And I know it's not a whole lot of turf management, but my turf management accomplishments are more not so much about fields and quality of grass, and they're all important. But my biggest accomplishments, I think, are building the relationships that I've built. Good ones, bad ones, they all come around full circle in the end, and you make yourself a better person and other people better, just building better relationships.
That's good stuff. With those relationships you've built in your career and now that you're in the position you're in and wanting to build more relationships with the newer generation of turf managers, what would your advice be for someone coming into the industry right now?
I know when I was, coming out of college and working my first job, you're young, you think you know a lot, or if not, you know everything. Just kind of take a back seat sometimes. And you can learn stuff from guys that don't have an education. You can learn stuff from guys that have PhDs. Somebody is there. Somebody will teach you something. It's whether, you have the ability and the knowledge to know when to be quiet, when to listen and learn things. I don't think, kids coming out expect turf managers, we're going to come out making $60,000 out of college. Well, that's not the case. So we all had to start somewhere, and most of us started at the bottom coming out of college, and we worked our way up to assistants and superintendents and head sports turf directors. So just stick in there. It's going to be a grind. A lot of us made it through the recession when, there wasn't a whole lot of money moving around. So keep your head down and keep working, and good things will happen.
Good advice. So any goals or plans for the TTA in the coming year?
Just try to make the conference and the trade show better every year. We've already had one meeting with the board of directors, and everybody's excited. They seem to think, everybody that I've talked to, we've gotten good feedback from our last trade show. So just trying to get some very knowledgeable and reputable speakers to come in and educate people and increase the trade show with the newest technology that's coming out, whether it be chemicals, equipment, for fertilizers, trying to keep up with the times because times in turf are moving fast. Seems like something new is coming out, every day almost with technology. So if we can keep on top of that and just continue the relationship building part, whether it be the Top Golf event we had last year seemed to be a good hit. Maybe adding some more social events in there for guys to get together. Maybe make some connections that they might have missed, and just create some networking where people can talk about things.
Very good. So I have to ask, and kind of our last question, with your busy work schedule and being on the board for TTA, I think a lot of turf managers, especially during this upcoming busy season, kind of struggle with that work-life balance. And I know you have a wife and kids. How do you strike that balance, and what do you guys do in your free time?
Well, you'd mentioned earlier about, heading out to the baseball and softball field. So my two kids, my daughter does, if you want to call it dance, it's a little organized chaos. So I try to make all those that I can. I also coach my son's little league team as well as soccer. And so spending as much time with them as I can. Both my parents are still alive, so me and my dad, we're actually heading down this Saturday to Birmingham to the Bassmaster Classic. We both like to fish. He's got the boat, and so we'll head down and visit an expo down there and hang out. And we take the kids to my parents' house every Sunday after church, and they get to spend time with the grandkids. And just when I come home, I try to be home. I don't try to be at work. Sometimes it's inevitable. We've had some bad weather, significant tornado came through town, so the phone blows up from time to time, and you really can't help that. But like I said, just when you're home, be home, enjoy it. Life's too short to work every day.
That is absolutely true, Ryan. Great advice to close on. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me this morning.
No problem. Enjoyed it.
For more episodes of Tennessee Turfgrass, subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
You've been listening to The Turf Zone. Thank you to our sponsors, including Buy Sod, world-class service on demand. Visit us online at www.buysod.com. For more episodes of The Turf Zone, visit theturfzone.com and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast app.